You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules. And remember how in the last episode I told you about the New York DA out of Monroe County? She was the one who felt like she could do 55 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone and then not be pulled over by the cops. Well, New York is at it again, except this time, the altercation and threat of not prosecuting someone who works for the county, well, it all happened back in June of 2020. And the Judicial Board released their ruling on Tuesday about that event. So let's break it down. Like I said, it was June of 2020. And Mark John Grisanti is serving as the acting justice of the New York Supreme Court in the 8th Judicial District. But he's not new to politics or to the law. He grew up in a lawyer family, and upon passing the bar, he worked for his grandfather's law practice. He jumped into politics in 2008 when he ran as a Democrat and was defeated in the primary for state senator. He tried again 2 years later. Same race, same seat, except he decided to run as a Republican. He won the primary and went on to win the general election against the Democrat that had beaten him 2 years earlier in the primary election. Mark won the seat again 2 years later, despite being a staunch advocate for gay marriage. So remember, this is 2012, and even some Democrats were still not supportive of gay marriage, let alone a Republican. But 2 years later, in 2014, Mark lost in the Republican primary. He went back to being a lawyer before being appointed as a judge 1 year later. Now, during all of this time in politics, Mark was involved in an altercation at a fundraising gala that was held at the Seneca Niagara Casino. Now, the fight erupted when a casino shareholder accused Mark of hating the Seneca Nation. So that's the Native American tribe that owned the casino. Mark claimed he was attacked while he was trying to actually de-escalate the situation. But witnesses reported that Mark was the aggressor in the altercation. Eventually, no charges were filed, and everyone, well, they went on their way. But Mark wasn't so lucky in 2020 when he and some of his neighbors finally tussled after months of verbal exchanges. So here's how that evening in June went down. Mark and his wife Maria were out walking their dog, or they were out eating at Dairy Queen. You guys, I'm going to be honest. I don't know which one is correct. And maybe it's both. Old news stories from 2020 reference Dairy Queen, but police body cam footage says they're walking their dog. So I don't know which one it is, and it doesn't really matter. I just want you guys to know I really try to bring you accurate information here. So when the couple circled the block to return to their home, Mark said that his neighbors were once again antagonizing him by parking their cars on his side of the street, and that they were also blocking his driveway. Now, he claimed the parking was purposeful because the neighbors, Joseph and Gina Melee, were trying to start a fight with him and his wife. Now, what happened next is different depending on if you get Mark and Maria's side of the story or Joseph and Gina's side of the story. But here, you can just listen to the first few minutes of the body cam footage. And there's a quick warning here. There are F words galore in the language from both parties. And I'm asking my editor to bleep them out, but there are so many, I still want you to be aware just in case we don't get them all.
Rip my friggin' chain off.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it all that camera.
All right, step. We're not doing
They're drunk.
Okay, well,
their stuff is over here. It's the gun and her stuff.
Okay.
Locked over there.
You're gonna step back.
I called because these guys parked their cars on all four cars. Right. City vehicle on their driveway, my driveway.
Okay.
He started it.
So, I'm not listening to a bunch of yelling. We'll talk calmly over here.
He started it.
Okay.
Started with the truck.
That's fine.
Wait,
So,
can I just ask you this? Is that blocking his driveway?
No.
That truck right there? Okay, I didn't think so.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
they,
Because that's why they
I
came
was
running
sitting
over.
on the porch, and they stopped and says that our truck is in their driveway. This and that. I says that truck is in their driveway. They came across the street here, pushed my husband.
Not came, they came running.
She came running. She literally.
So what was the first thing that they said?
He-
Wait till my son here.
Ma'am, if you don't stop yelling, this is going to be a problem for you.
I don't care.
Okay, cool. Then get over here.
You're not going to arrest me.
I sure
My son, no. You're not.
We are not doing this right now. We are not doing this right now.
No, it's
Push
okay.
it,
You better get off my fucking
Let him
wife.
arrest me. I don't care.
Dude.
Come on, take
You're
me.
going in the back of the car
I
until
will.
we can deal with this.
No, you have no idea of the shit that you
Okay.
can't put up with.
Okay, put your hands behind your
I
back or
will.
we are going to have a problem. Put your hands behind your back.
Hey,
No,
you arrest my fucking wife, you're gonna be sorry.
I don't care. Let him. Let him
My
fucking
son
do
and my
it.
daughter both
I
police
don't
officers.
care. I don't
Okay.
care. If it gets you,
Take
get
a
out of here,
seat.
I will.
I am so done listening to you scream.
Why? Because it's the truth. It's
No,
15
because
years
I
of
want to hear
bullshit.
everybody talk.
Now, the body cam footage goes on much longer, but that gives you an idea of how police entered the heated situation. And what they found out in their investigation is that during the initial confrontation, that Mark repeatedly used phrases like, "you park here every effing Thursday," or "you effing a-hole," or "let's go, you effing tough guy," or "I'll effing flatten your face," or "nobody likes you effing guys." And of course, we can't forget the "you piece of shiz" comment. So clearly, I cleaned that up a little bit for you guys. Now, after the verbal melee, a physical spat broke out between Maria and Joseph, which led to Maria biting Joseph on the arm. And then Mark, in an attempt to defend his wife, well, he began tussling with Joseph, and Mark's white tank top was ripped from his shoulders, kind of like the Hulk. Then the whole situation exploded even more when Buffalo police officer Ryan Gear had a short fuse, and like you heard in the video, he cuffed Maria and placed her in the rear seat of the squad car. During all of the cuffing portion of the body cam footage, you can hear Mark tell officers that if you arrest my effing wife, you're going to be sorry. Okay, I just got to point out how much this man loves that word. And we need to know, much like the incident with the Monroe DA, who was throwing her weight around saying she's above the law, this also felt like the judge was throwing his weight around as if he is above the law. And that's how law enforcement on the scene were seeing it. Now, another time where Mark felt like he could possibly gain favor was after Maria was cuffed, Mark made a phone call to his daughter, who just happens to be a police officer. Now, during that call, he names each officer on the scene by their given name that's on their badge. And I guess he's like trying to tell his daughter to persuade them to handle this situation differently, or maybe the fact that a different officer knows they're there, that they're going to do something different. I don't know what he was trying to get out of that. But the body cam footage does go on, and the judge keeps justifying his position. And then it all explodes again when he demands that he had a right to shove the police officer. Here, I want you to listen to that portion of the video.
Trust me.
Because,
No,
I mean, I'm sure you
Do
understand,
me a
I'm
favor.
getting...
Get around in the car and I'll bring her inside. And I didn't mean to tackle you, but I mean, you kind of threw my wife down on the ground pretty hard, and I don't appreciate that.
I understand that.
All right? I really don't. If I would do that to your wife and you're outside, you do the same thing.
Sure, if you were a police officer and she was screaming
No,
in my face...
daughter's a police officer, and I know what you guys are going through right now. And trust me, my daughter's a police officer, my son-in-law's a police officer, my
Okay, and if someone was screaming at your daughter and approaching her like that, she would have done the same thing.
No, you grabbed my wife from over there and dragged her over here, which was not necessary.
Okay.
So you need to chill out about that.
I have a camera, so that it's all documented.
I don't care about your camera. Just give it a little constructive criticism, dude.
Okay.
Okay?
Let me give you some constructive criticism. You want to drop another copper's name? You want to scream about, Molly or the mayor? How about you shut the up? And you keep that quiet. Shut your goddamn mouth. Put your hands behind your back. Listen. Put your hands behind your back. You want to be difficult? You want to say, I know all these coppers, I know all these things.
No,
You want to make us look dirty? Is that what you want to do? So how am I helping you now? Tell me, how can I help you? Shut up and let me talk to you, you old geezer. Shut up. Shut up and let me talk to you. Since you had so much to say and you touch a cop. So let me talk to you, guy. Let me talk to you, guy. Quiet. No, you're not done talking yet.
All right, again, you guys, I'm not sure why everyone just can't keep their emotions under control here, but Wowzers, there's a lot of fuses that were blown. Now, Mark gets hauled down to the station. His wife gets hauled down to the station. And then in the end, no one is charged. But Mark, the judge, had to face a disciplinary council. And finally, nearly 4 years later, that council has made their ruling on this altercation, and it happened this week. On Tuesday, the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct revealed that a 6-4 vote determined that a censure was warranted for Mark. Now, the panel said the judge displayed exceptionally poor judgment and that he fell far short of the high standards of judicial conduct. They also ruled that Mark exacerbated his poor behavior when he sought to obtain preferential treatment from the police by referencing his relatives who work as police officers and also mentioning his close friendship with the mayor of Buffalo. Now, the panel said seeking this preferential treatment detracted from the dignity of his judicial office. The majority of the panel indicated that Mark's acceptance of responsibility and his otherwise, quote, unblemished record as a lawyer and then as a judge, well, they say all of that played a role in the conclusion that a censure was the appropriate punishment. Now, a minority of 4 panelists argued that Mark should have instead been removed from his office, and that should have been his punishment. One commission chair who felt like Mark should have been removed, well, that person said it wasn't just his conduct in the altercation and in the body cam footage, but it was also his conduct before the board that made him feel like he warranted removal. Now, another panel member said that the lying to the law enforcement was reason enough to be removed from the bench. But those who were for only censuring Mark said that his comments to law enforcement didn't constitute lying, since he was probably just seeing the situation differently than the neighbors with whom he argued. Okay, I should note that one of the officers did tell the panel that the neighbors were parking their cars in an annoying but not illegal way, and they were doing it just to F with the Grisantes. Clearly, these people did not learn how to play well with others back in kindergarten. There is one thing the panel did agree on, and that is that Mark's profanity was improper. Okay, so what does it mean to be censured? Well, according to the rules that govern judicial conduct, Mark may be barred from serving for 2 years. But that's not going to be determined just yet, since Mark has the right to, within 30 days, request a review of the determination. And I'm guessing he's going to request a review. But something interesting did come to the surface during the investigation. Here's what happened. Mark sold his law practice when he became a judge. He sold that practice to Peter Pecoracco and Matthew Lazaro. Now, while Mark was on the bench, he covered cases that had representation from the 2 men that bought his law practice. And during that time, Mark was still receiving payments for that purchase. That's just really a bad look to be receiving payments from people and then settling their cases at the same time. It's not illegal, but it should have been disclosed. Also, just for your information, a censure isn't that uncommon. In New York since 1978, 351 censures have been issued. So if you're thinking they were aggressive with their findings on Mark's assault accusations, there have been plenty of other times that judges have been censured. All right, remember how we are on trial watch for Karen Reed and Chad Daybell? Well, let's start with Karen Reed. Today is day 4 of her murder trial. She's accused of backing over her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, who was a Boston police officer. Now, the state believes she left him to die in the snow outside of the house of another police officer who was at that time having a party with other law enforcement connected friends. Okay, all of this happened in the dead of winter in January of 2022. Well, so far at the trial, prosecutors have presented to the jury that the backing over incident was just a culmination of more than a month of disagreements between the couple. Now, they cited a screaming match that happened between the couple during a New Year's trip to Aruba. Allegedly, the argument in Aruba was about Karen accusing John of cheating on her. Now, prosecutors were granted 45 minutes to give their opening statements, and for the prosecution, a bulk of that time was just introducing the victim to the jury. But the defense didn't hold back during their 45-minute opening statement. They attempted to drop bombshells, like the claims that lead investigator Michael Proctor, who is a Massachusetts state trooper, well, they're saying he did a shoddy investigation. They also immediately revealed to the jury that the investigator, Michael Proctor, is very good friends with Ryan Albert. That's the Boston police officer who was throwing the party and whose house it was that John O'Keefe was found dead in front of. Now, the defense also pointed out that Michael Proctor didn't even investigate the partygoers, but instead he zeroed in on Karen from the get-go. The defense also said they will be presenting evidence that Michael Proctor texted friends on his personal cell phone and that he also revealed sensitive information about the investigation in those texts. They also hinted that the sensitive information included Michael Proctor's true feelings about Karen Reed, which I'm guessing those feelings weren't that glowing, since the defense says the texts have phrases like, "I hope Karen kills herself," and then there's name calling that you would probably reserve for your worst enemies. Then the opening statement by the defense got a little scandalous when they claimed that Michael Proctor seized Karen's cell phone without having a warrant, and that while the phone was in Michael's possession, he searched her photo archive for nude pics. But they say he was disappointed that he didn't find any. Now, the trial is being filmed, and even though the jury will never be shown, you can see that Karen is intently looking at the jurors. I would guess she's been successful at making eye contact with them. On Tuesday, a paramedic who was one of the first to arrive at the scene testified that Karen said the phrase, "I hit John," and he said she said it multiple times. While on cross-examination, the defense lawyer did get the paramedic to admit that John's injuries on that snowy day, well, he got him to admit that they could come from something other than the Lexus bumper. Also on Tuesday, the first officer to arrive at the scene, well, he testified that his report from that snowy morning referenced Karen saying over and over, "Is he dead?" But according to the evidence, that was the only phrase that was written in the report that was attributed to Karen. The defense then asked the responding police officer about his grand jury testimony. They said during the testimony to the grand jury, the responding officer said Karen said way more than, "Is he dead?" He testified to the grand jury that she also said, "This is my fault, and I can't believe this is happening." When asked by the defense why those statements weren't included in the initial report, the police officer simply said, "It was an oversight." Now, both the first responding police officer and another responding police officer testified that when they arrived that morning, they didn't see any broken pieces to a Lexus taillight. They attributed the fact that they didn't see any taillight pieces to the freshly fallen snow. But the defense pointed out that taillight pieces were discovered days later and were submitted as evidence for the trial. Now, all of this happened on Monday and Tuesday. There was no court Wednesday, and the trial resumed today. One expert who spoke with Fox Digital said that the case could be won or lost on the autopsy findings. If it is not clear that the injuries sustained could have come from a bumper on Karen's Lexus, then it'll be difficult for the jury to convict Karen for his death. And remember, the prosecution alleges the injuries happened when Karen backed over John. But the defense says the injuries were suffered during a fight with fellow police officers and that the dogs at the house were part of the damage that was caused to John on that night. All right, also, as a reminder, massive crowd support has been and will be in attendance for Karen because many have alleged that a crooked police force has covered up the death and erroneously accused Karen. Now, those allegations are part of an ongoing federal investigation into the Boston Police Department. Back in October, a blogger who has ardently supported Karen, well, he was arrested for allegedly intimidating witnesses. And his arrest for that action, well, it's only fueled the crowd support for Karen. Now, the judge in Karen's case did rule last week that the blogger can attend the court proceedings. As this trial moves forward, I'll keep you updated. And as far as the Chad Daybell trial in Idaho, there's really only a couple of things that have stuck in my mind that were different than the evidence that was presented in the Lori Vallow Daybell trial that happened last year. Okay, just in case we have new listeners, Chad is the man accused of being a cult leader who eventually killed his own wife, Tammy, in order to marry Lori Vallow less than 2 weeks later. And he's also accused of helping to kill Lori's 2 children, JJ and Tylee, and then burying the bodies in the backyard of his property. So here's the new info. The state called 2 witnesses who attended both the funeral and the viewing of the body of Tammy Daybell. One witness said she heard Chad tell 2 different stories about how Tammy died. In the first story, Chad said he was working in his office, and when he went to bed at about 1 o'clock, he found Tammy dead. But in the second story, he said he went to bed with Tammy at about 9 p.m., and that at midnight he was awakened when Tammy slid out of bed and fell to the floor. Now, those stories are clearly different. And for me, here's the problem. If Tammy was cold to the touch, how did she slide out of bed? Now, another difference in this trial versus Lori's trial is that Chad's lawyer, John Pryor, well, he's very bulldog-like. Let me give you an example. When he was cross-examining the FBI cell phone data expert, he pushed the concept that the tools the FBI uses to track cell phones, well, he says they're only available to the government. It's not like you or I can go buy the off-the-shelf version of this tool. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't another way to track cell phones, but what John Pryor was, I believe, attempting to establish was this. Maybe he's just trying to find one juror, just one, who is distrustful of the FBI. It takes just one juror to have a hung jury. And if he can hint enough that the FBI planted or manufactured cell phone evidence, then maybe he can spare Chad's life. It's totally opinion by me, but this is our second peek at the evidence, and the cell phone data is pretty rock solid. So maybe that's the angle he's trying to work. Now, the Daybell trial is moving along swiftly. Over 35 witnesses have been called, and I'll keep you updated as it moves forward. And let's finish with this story that has an entire law enforcement community mourning when 4 officers were killed and 4 others wounded by one lone gunman. Now, the specifics of the incident are still scant, but we do know a lengthy gun battle occurred between the suspected felon and law enforcement, and the alleged gunman is now dead, along with the 4 officers. Now, the details that have been released are these. On Monday afternoon, members of a U.S. Marshals Service task force were serving an active felony warrant at a home in East Charlotte when a fugitive with a high-powered rifle began firing at them from the second floor. All of this is according to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. Multiple officers were hit and reinforcements were called in. As local police arrived and began to rescue the downed task force members, more gunfire erupted from the home and even more officers were wounded. So who's firing the shots from the house? Well, that would be 39-year-old Terry Clark Hughes Jr. He finally exited the house with his firearm, and he was killed by law enforcement. He was pronounced dead at the scene on the front lawn of the home. Now, in the gun battle, 3 members of the task force were killed, and 1 officer from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department died from his injuries. The 4 who were injured are expected to survive their gun injuries. Now, it had been rumored in the late hours of Monday when this all went down that a second shooter was present at the scene. Police are now not so sure. During a press conference on Tuesday, Police Chief Johnny Jennings told reporters that officers on the scene seemed to believe shots were continuing to ring out after Terry Hughes was shot dead on the front lawn. Well, in the press conference, he left the question as kind of unanswered, and that they would be investigating further to see if there was another gunman or gunwoman. We do know that 2 women were located within the home, an adult woman and a 17-year-old. Both were taken into custody and have been cooperative. Police did confirm that no additional suspects are being looked for since they believe the shootout involved only Terry Hughes and the police, and potentially maybe one of the females. Now, the 2 females have not been charged with any crimes as of this recording. Investigators gathered a semi-automatic AR-15 rifle and a .40 caliber handgun from the scene, and there was also ammunition left unspent for both guns. Investigators are also gathering all the shell casings and projectiles, which will be immense with the intensity of this gun battle. And then I should note something else. If you have a chance, make sure you check out social media or the YouTube broadcast of this, because you're going to see a picture of the front of the house. The officers literally brought in equipment and tore the front of the house off before they started searching. It's just so bizarre looking. Now, 12 officers have been placed on administrative leave pending the results of the investigation. And Terry Hughes, well, he was wanted for possession of a firearm by a felon, and then also felony flee to elude charges. Okay, that's all we've got on him. They're not really explaining what he was fleeing from and how they knew he had firearms. There's been multiple videos of the incident that have surfaced on the internet, and the videos were shot by neighbors and passersby. And what I can tell you is this was not over quick. The videos extend for several minutes. This was truly a gun battle. And I would have played them on here, but all you can just hear is shots ringing out and then lots of commentary by the neighbors filming the battle. Let's take a moment to remember the 4 slain officers. Now we have 42-year-old Sam Peloche and 46-year-old Alden Elliott. They both worked for the state's Department of Adult Correction, and both were fathers, and both had been assigned to the task force. Sam Peloche joined the Correctional Department in 2013, and Alden Elliott joined in 2016. Both were previously probation officers. Sam has left behind a wife and 2 children, and Alden is survived by a wife and 1 child. And U.S. Marshals Deputy Thomas Weeks Jr., who was 48 years old, well, he was also killed in the shooting. He was a husband and a father of 4 and had served with the Marshal Service for 13 years. He worked with Customs and Border Patrol for 8 years prior to moving on to the U.S. Marshal Service. And then finally, Charlotte, Mecklenburg police officer Joshua Iyer was shot at the scene, then transported to the hospital where he died from his injuries. Joshua died with his wife by his side. He left behind a 3-year-old boy. He had been with the department for 6 years and was recently named Officer of the Month. Willie Rackford, now he's the longtime director of the Charlotte Mecklenburg Community Relations Department. Well, he said the following: "We've got to recognize it's not normal to kill 4 police officers and wound 4 others. We've become literally numb to it, and we make it a part of our norm. When hope is crushed, our hearts are crushed. Let's keep hope alive. Let's restore our hope." Nothing I say will outshine the comments by Willie. So I'll just leave it at that. If more information that is relevant comes forward, I will share it with you on future episodes. Well, that's your Thursday episode of Rise in Crime. I'd truly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to the podcast on the various platforms. And please leave a 5-star review if you're so inclined. They are greatly appreciated and they help this community grow. Join me again on Monday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.